Rich dad sees a beggar woman protecting his son from his new wife and does the unthinkable. Michael Thompson was in the middle of an important meeting when he heard shouts coming from the street. His construction company was going through a crucial moment of expansion, but something in those agitated voices made him stop talking and walk to the window of his 10th floor office. What he saw down below made his heart race. A woman in a red dress was shouting furiously at a lady in simple worn-out clothes who was holding a blonde child firmly against her chest. It was his 3-year-old son, Ethan, and the woman shouting was Jessica, his wife of just 6 months. "Let go of that boy right now," Jessica yelled, trying to pull Ethan by the arms. "He is my son." "No, ma'am. This boy was lost and crying. You were too far away to be his mother," replied the older woman in a calm but firm voice. Michael felt his legs tremble. How had Ethan gotten out of the mall where Jessica had taken him to buy clothes? And why did his son seem calmer in the arms of that stranger than when he was with his stepmother? Without thinking twice, Michael left the partners waiting in the meeting room and ran to the elevator. His fingers trembled as he insistently pressed the button for the ground floor. Every second felt like an eternity as he imagined what could have happened to Ethan. When he finally reached the street, a crowd had already formed around the two women. Jessica kept trying to pull Ethan from the older lady's arms, but the child clung even tighter to the stranger's neck. "Ethan," Michael shouted, making his way through the people. "My son." Jessica immediately changed her posture upon seeing her husband. Her furious face transformed into a mask of maternal concern. "Michael, thank God you're here," she exclaimed, running toward him. "This woman kidnapped our son. I was in the bathroom for just a minute, and when I came out, she had taken Ethan away." "That's not true," said the older woman, standing up slowly without letting go of Ethan. "I found this boy crying alone in the park, near the mall. When this lady arrived, shouting and trying to pull him roughly, he got even more scared." Michael looked at his son and felt his chest tighten. Ethan had tears in his eyes, but he wasn't crying anymore. He was quiet, nestled in the arms of the unknown woman, as if it were the safest place in the world. "Ethan, come here to Daddy," said Michael, holding out his arms. To his surprise, the boy hesitated. He looked at Michael, then at Jessica, and finally at the woman holding him. Only then did he reach out his little arms to his father. "Thank you for taking care of him," Michael said to the woman, trying to understand what had happened. "What's your name?" "Margaret, sir. Margaret Wilson. And you don't need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same." Jessica pulled Michael by the arm. "Let's get out of here, honey. This place is full of strange people, and you old woman, don't come near my son again, understand?" Margaret didn't respond to the insult. She just looked into Michael's eyes with an expression he couldn't decipher. There was something there, the worry, knowledge, fear. "Wait," said Michael. "How exactly did you find Ethan?" Margaret took a deep breath before answering. "I was sitting in my usual spot near the park when I saw this boy walking alone and crying. He was calling for Daddy and Mommy. When I approached to help, he said he had gotten lost from Aunt Jessica at the mall." "Aunt?" Michael looked at Jessica. "Why does he call you Aunt?" Jessica laughed nervously. "It's a phase, honey. Kids sometimes get confused. You know how shy Ethan still is with me. We're getting to know each other better every day." But Michael noticed that Ethan shrank when Jessica spoke. The boy gripped his father's shirt tighter. "Daddy, can I go home?" murmured Ethan in a low voice. "Of course, my son. Let's go home." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. In the car on the way home, Michael tried to talk to Ethan about what had happened. Jessica was sitting in the front seat, nervously fiddling with her phone. "Ethan, tell me how you got lost at the mall." The boy played with the seatbelt, avoiding looking at his father. "I wanted to go to the bathroom," he said quietly. "Aunt Jessica said I had to wait, so I went out to look for the bathroom by myself." "And how did you end up in the park?" "I got lost. I started to cry. Then Grandma Margaret found me." "Grandma?" Michael looked in the rearview mirror. "Do you know her, Ethan?" Before the boy could answer, Jessica turned around in her seat. "Ethan, you shouldn't talk to strangers on the street. That woman could have been dangerous. You understand that, don't you? Ethan nodded, but Michael noticed that his son continued to avoid looking at Jessica. Something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what. That night after Ethan went to sleep, Michael tried to talk to Jessica about the incident. Didn't you think it was strange for Ethan to call that lady Grandma? Jessica was putting lotion on her hands, not looking at her husband. Children make up a lot of things, Michael. You shouldn't pay attention to everything Ethan says. He has a very active imagination. But he seemed to know her. Know her? Michael, you're exaggerating. It was just a misunderstanding. The important thing is that Ethan is safe at home. Michael wanted to believe his wife, but something deep in his chest wouldn't let him rest. He decided he would investigate on his own. The next day, instead of going straight to the office, Michael stopped by Ethan's school. It was a small private school, but a good one, where the teachers knew every child by name. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," greeted the principal, Mrs. Rachel. "How is Ethan? He's been quieter lately." "Quieter how?" "Well, since Mrs. Jessica started picking him up sometimes, we've noticed he's been a bit withdrawn. Nothing major. Sometimes children take time to get used to changes in the family." "Jessica picks up Ethan here?" Mrs. Rachel looked confused. "Of course. Didn't she tell you? She comes here at least twice a week. Usually talks with Ethan for a few minutes before you all leave." Michael felt a chill down his spine. Jessica had never mentioned that she visited Ethan's school. "And have you seen an older lady with simple clothes around here?" "Oh, Mrs. Margaret. Yes, she shows up almost every day." Michael's heart stopped. "Every day? She stands outside the gate, right around dismissal time. Never bothers anyone, just watches the children leave. A few times I saw her talking to Ethan when he was waiting to be picked up." Michael could barely process the information. "How long has this been going on?" "About 3 months, more or less, right around when Ethan started getting quieter." Michael left the school with his head spinning. Why was Margaret watching Ethan? And why hadn't Jessica told him about her visits to the school? He decided to go to the park where he had found Ethan the day before. It was mid-morning, and there were few people around. Sitting on a bench with a plastic bag beside her was Margaret. "Mrs. Margaret?" She looked up and didn't seem surprised to see him. "Mr. Thompson, I was hoping you would come." "Hoping?" "Sit here with me. We need to talk about Ethan." Ricardo hesitated for a moment, but sat down on the bench beside her. "The school principal told me you show up there every day." Margaret took a deep breath. "That's true, and I bet she also told you that Ethan has been quieter lately." "How do you know that?" "Because I see, Mr. Thompson. I see everything. I see when your wife picks Ethan up from school and how she talks to him. I see how the boy gets sad after she leaves. I see the tears he hides when he thinks no one is watching." Ricardo felt his chest tighten. "What exactly did you see?" Margaret looked at her own hands for a long moment before answering. "Mr. Thompson, may I ask you a question? Do you really know the woman you married?" The question took Ricardo by surprise. "Of course I know Jessica. We've been married for 6 months. 6 months is not enough time to truly know someone, especially when that person has ulterior motives. Mrs. Wilson, with all due respect, you don't know my wife. Maybe not, but I know Ethan, and I know when a child is afraid." "Afraid?" "Ethan isn't afraid of Jessica." Margaret looked him directly in the eyes. "Yesterday, when your wife was yelling at me, Ethan told me something. He said, 'Grandma, please don't make me go with her. She gets angry when Daddy isn't there.'" Ricardo felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. That can't be true. "Mr. Thompson, I was a teacher for 30 years before life changed for me. I can recognize when a child is suffering. If that's true, why has Ethan never told me anything?" "Because he loves you and is afraid you'll be sad. Children sometimes prefer to suffer in silence rather than hurt the people they love." Ricardo ran his hands over his face, trying to process everything he was hearing. "Why are you telling me this? Why do you care about Ethan?" Margaret looked away, as if seeing something Ricardo couldn't see. "Because I lost a child once, Mr. Thompson. And I don't want to see another suffer when I can do something to help. You had children? I had a daughter, Emily. She was the same age as Ethan when she passed. Ricardo noticed the pain in Margaret's voice and felt remorse for all the times he had passed by homeless people without caring about their stories. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you. It was a long time ago. But when I first saw Ethan, crying alone that afternoon, it was as if time had turned back. I couldn't just ignore it." "What afternoon? You knew Ethan before yesterday." Margaret hesitated. "I did. Actually, it was about 3 months ago. Ethan had run away from the nanny who was taking care of him at the time. I found him lost in the same park, crying. I helped him find his way home." "The nanny? But Jessica said she always took care of Ethan." "No, Mr. Thompson. The nanny's name was Sarah, a young woman, very affectionate with Ethan. He spoke of her with great love, but one day she just disappeared and Ethan was very sad." Ricardo vaguely remembered Jessica mentioning that she had fired the nanny for incompetence, but he was so busy with work at the time that he didn't pay much attention. "And after the nanny left, Ethan started spending more time alone. Sometimes I would see him in the window of your building, looking at the street with a sad face. That's when I started spending more time around here, just to make sure he was okay." "You know where I live?" "I do. It's in that building on the corner, apartment 1204. Ethan told me when I helped him the first time." Ricardo was silent for a few minutes, trying to put all the puzzle pieces together. "Mrs. Wilson, I need to ask Ethan some questions when I get home. But if what you're telling me is true, I understand it's hard to believe. I know I don't look presentable, and people usually don't trust those living on the streets. But I only want what's best for Ethan. How did you end up here on the streets?" Margaret sighed deeply. "It's a long story. After Emily passed, I fell into depression. I lost my teaching job, then I lost my home, and finally I lost the will to live. But finding Ethan gave me purpose again. Taking care of him, even from afar, gave me a reason to go on." Michael felt a lump in his throat. He looked at this woman he had judged by her appearance and saw for the first time the person behind the worn-out clothes. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything right now. You just need to pay attention to your son. Watch how he behaves when he's alone with your wife. See if he tells you everything that happens during the day. And if you find out I'm right, please protect Ethan." Michael stood up from the bench, still processing everything he had heard. "Mrs. Margaret, where can I find you if I need to talk again?" "I'm usually around here during the day. At night I sleep at the church 2 blocks away. Father John lets me stay in the parish hall. Thank you for telling me all this, and I'm sorry for not paying attention before. You're a father who works hard to give the best to your son. Don't blame yourself for trusting the wrong person. Just don't let it continue." Michael went home with a heavy heart. He needed to find out the truth, but didn't know how to approach the subject with Ethan without scaring him even more. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When he got home, Jessica was in the living room watching television. Ethan was playing alone on the floor with his toy cars, but Michael noticed he played in silence, without making the engine noises children his age usually make. "Hi, honey," said Jessica, getting up to kiss him. "How was work?" "It was good. How was your day?" "Quiet. Ethan ate well and did his homework. He's such an obedient boy." Michael looked at his son, who hadn't looked up from his toys even to greet him. "Ethan, come give your dad a hug." The boy stood up and ran into his father's arms. Michael hugged him tightly and whispered in his ear, "Daddy loves you very much, okay? You can tell me anything." Ethan pulled back a little to look into his father's eyes. For a moment, it seemed like he was going to say something important, but then he glanced quickly at Jessica and just nodded. "I love you too, Daddy." During dinner, Michael tried to engage Ethan in conversation about his day, but the answers were always short and lacking detail. Jessica, on the other hand, talked non-stop about unimportant things. "Oh, Michael, I forgot to tell you. I'm going out tomorrow afternoon to do some shopping. Can you come home early to stay with Ethan?" "Of course. Actually, I was thinking of leaving early anyway. Maybe we can do something together, right, Ethan?" The boy's face lit up for the first time that day. "Can we go to the park, Daddy?" "Of course we can," Jessica quickly interjected. "But Ethan, don't you think the park is too dirty? You could catch something. We'd better stay home watching cartoons." Michael saw the light in his son's eyes fade again. "Actually, I think some fresh air will do Ethan good. How long has it been since you went to the park, son?" Ethan looked nervously at Jessica before answering. "It's been a long time, Daddy." That night, after Ethan went to sleep, Michael decided to approach the subject with Jessica. "Jess, I need to ask you something. Why didn't you tell me you visit Ethan's school?" Jessica stopped brushing her hair and looked at him through the mirror. "Visit? What are you talking about?" "The principal told me you go there twice a week to talk with Ethan." "Oh, that." Jessica went back to brushing her hair as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Sometimes I stop by to see how he's adapting. I didn't think it was important to mention." "And why did you fire the nanny, Sarah?" This time Jessica turned to face him. "Sarah? Michael, are you interrogating me? Why so many questions about things that are already in the past?" "I'm just trying to understand some things. Ethan seemed to like her very much." "Ethan was very attached to her, and that wasn't healthy. A child can't be closer to the employee than to his stepmother. I made the right decision." "But you didn't talk to me before firing her." Jessica got up from the vanity and went to bed. "Michael, you were too busy with the company to worry about household details. I handled the situation as I saw best. Now Ethan is getting used to me, and that's what matters." "Is he really getting used to it? Because I see him very quiet lately." "Children go through phases. You're exaggerating." Michael lay down next to his wife, but stayed awake all night, thinking about everything Margaret had told him. For the first time since marrying Jessica, he began to question whether he really knew the woman sleeping beside him. The next day, Michael left work early to pick up Ethan from school. He wanted to see for himself if Margaret really stayed around there. When he arrived at the school, 15 minutes before dismissal time, he saw a familiar figure sitting on a bench across the street. It was Margaret, with the same plastic bag from the day before. She wasn't looking at the school, but rather at an old notebook where she was writing something. Michael felt curious and crossed the street. "Mrs. Margaret." She looked up and quickly closed the notebook. "Mr. Michael came to pick up Ethan." "I did. And you? Are you here every day?" Margaret nodded. "It's hard to explain. After I started worrying about Ethan, I couldn't stop. I come here just to make sure he's okay." "What were you writing?" Margaret hesitated before answering. "They're notes, things I observe about Ethan. I know it might seem strange, but since I was a teacher, I have the habit of noting down children's behaviors." "May I see?" Margaret looked at the notebook, then at Michael. "Promise you won't get mad at me?" "I promise." She opened the notebook to a specific page. Michael saw several handwritten notes. Day 15. Ethan arrived at school crying. The principal asked if he was okay. He said he had a stomachache. Day 18. Ethan stayed in the yard alone during recess. Other children played, but he just sat there. Day 22. Mrs. Jessica came to pick up Ethan. I saw her scold him on the sidewalk because he had dirtied his t-shirt. Day 25. Ethan waited 20 minutes alone after dismissal time. When I asked where his stepmother was, he said she had forgotten him. Michael felt his stomach turn. There were pages and pages of similar notes. "How long have you been observing this?" 3 months, since the first time I found Ethan lost." "And did all these things really happen?" "I wouldn't make up anything about a child, Mr. Michael. Every line here is something I saw with my own eyes." At that moment, the school bell rang and the children began to leave. Michael saw Ethan looking for him at the gate and waved. "Daddy!" Ethan ran to hug him with a genuine smile on his face. "Hi, champ. How was school today?" "It was good. Teacher Emma said my drawing was pretty." "How nice. I want to see that drawing at home." Ethan then noticed Margaret sitting on the bench. "Grandma Margaret!" he shouted and ran to hug her. The boy's reaction surprised Michael. This wasn't how a child greeted a stranger. This was how they greeted someone they knew and liked. "Hi, my angel," said Margaret, hugging Ethan affectionately. How are you? I'm good. Daddy came to pick me up today. That's wonderful. Your daddy is very special, isn't he? Yes, he is. Grandma, do you want to go to the park with me and Daddy? Michael saw Margaret hesitate and look at him. Ethan, Grandma Margaret probably has other things to do. Actually, said Margaret, I would love to go to the park with you, if your daddy doesn't mind. Michael was curious to observe more of the interaction between Ethan and Margaret. Of course, let's all go. The park was 2 blocks from the school. On the way, Ethan chattered non-stop, telling Margaret about his gym class and the snack he had eaten. It was the first time in months that Michael had seen his son so excited. At the park, Ethan ran to the swings and asked Michael to push him. Margaret sat on a nearby bench, watching with a smile on her face. Higher, Daddy. Higher! Michael pushed the swing, but his mind was focused on observing his son's behavior. Ethan was beaming, laughing loudly, asking questions about everything he saw. It was as if he were a completely different child. After a while, Ethan got off the swing and went to play in the sand with other boys. Michael sat down next to Margaret. He's very happy today, she commented. It's true. I haven't seen him like this in a long time. When was the last time you came to the park together? Michael thought and realized with horror that he couldn't remember. I don't know. With my busy work schedule, I haven't had much time. And before you married Mrs. Jessica? Before we used to come at least once a week. Ethan loved the park. What changed? Michael fell silent, watching his son play. What had changed, really? When had he stopped prioritizing these moments with Ethan? Mr. Michael, may I ask you a personal question? Go ahead. Why did you marry Mrs. Jessica? The question caught him off guard. Well, she's beautiful, intelligent. She seemed to be good with Ethan. Seemed. At first, she showed a lot of interest in him. She always asked about his routine, said she wanted to be a good stepmother. And now? Michael thought about the last few weeks. When was the last time Jessica had asked about Ethan spontaneously? Now she says Ethan is going through a difficult phase and needs more discipline. What kind of discipline? She thinks Ethan is too spoiled, that he needs to learn to be quieter, to not bother the adults. Margaret shook her head. Ethan is 3 years old, Mr. Michael. He should be running around, making noise, asking questions. A child who is too quiet is a child who is suffering. At that moment, Ethan ran over to them. Daddy, can I go on the slide? Of course, son. Ethan started to run off, but Margaret called him. Ethan, wait just a minute. The boy came back. Have you been playing a lot at home? Ethan looked at the ground. Not really. Aunt Jessica said toys make too much noise and that I have to learn to be quiet like a big boy. Michael felt as if he had been slapped in the face. And what do you do when you're being quiet? I stay in my room looking at my little books. Sometimes I draw. And does Aunt Jessica play with you? Ethan hesitated for a long moment. Sometimes. But she said she doesn't like to play with toy cars because it's a boy thing, and that she can't hold me on her lap because then I'll get too spoiled. Michael stood up abruptly. Ethan, go play on the slide. We'll be leaving soon. When the boy walked away, Michael turned to Margaret. I'm a terrible father. No, Mr. Thompson. You're a father who works very hard and trusted the wrong person. That doesn't make you a bad father. How did I not notice? How did I let this happen? Because manipulators are very good at what they do. They know how to act when people are watching and how to act when they're alone. What do I do now? First, you need to make sure this is really what's happening. Then you need to make a decision about what's best for Ethan. How can I be sure? Margaret thought for a moment. You could install cameras at home, or you could try coming home at unexpected times. But most importantly, you need to talk to Ethan in an environment where he feels safe to tell the truth. Do you think he would tell me if Jessica is doing something wrong? Children Ethan's age are afraid of causing problems for the adults they love. He might be protecting you as much as protecting himself. Thompson looked at Ethan, who was now happily playing on the slide with other children. Mrs. Margaret, can I ask you a favor? Of course. Can you keep watching Ethan? I know I have no right to ask this, but... Mr. Thompson, I was already doing that anyway. I'll keep looking after him even if from a distance. Thank you. And If you notice anything very concerning, can you call me? Thompson wrote his cell phone number on a piece of paper and gave it to Margaret. I'll call if necessary. They spent another half hour at the park. Ethan was beaming, as if those were the best 30 minutes of his life. When it was time to leave, he got sad. Already, Daddy? Already, son, but we can come back another day. Promise? I promise. Ethan said goodbye to Margaret with a tight hug. Bye, Grandma Margaret. Thank you for coming to the park with me. You're welcome, my dear. Take care of yourself, okay? On the way home, Ethan was much more talkative than usual. Daddy, why does Grandma Margaret live on the street? The question took Thompson by surprise. How do you know she lives on the street? Because I saw her sleeping on a park bench once when you took me to school. And what did you think about that? I felt sad. Everyone should have a home. That's true. Sometimes people go through hard times in life. Daddy, can I ask you a question? Of course, son. Why doesn't Aunt Jessica like Grandma Margaret? Thompson stopped walking. Why do you think she doesn't like her? Because yesterday she got really mad when Grandma Margaret helped me, and she always gets mad when I talk about her. Have you talked about Grandma Margaret to Aunt Jessica before? Ethan nodded. Once I told her I met her on the street and that she was nice to me. Aunt Jessica got mad and said I shouldn't talk to strangers. And did you obey? Ethan went quiet for a moment. I tried, but Grandma Margaret is nice. She doesn't seem like a stranger. When they got home, Jessica was putting away her mall purchases in the kitchen. Hi, honey. How was the park? It was great. Ethan had a lot of fun. Ethan ran to show his hands covered in dirt to Jessica. Aunt Jessica, look, I played in the sand. Jessica's reaction was immediate. Ethan, you're filthy. Go take a bath right now before you spread this dirt all over the house. Ethan's enthusiasm vanished instantly. But I just wanted to show. Go take a bath now, said Jessica firmly. And next time, be more careful not to get so dirty. Ethan looked at his father with a disappointed face but obeyed without question. When the boy was out of earshot, Thompson looked at his wife. He was just playing, Jess. It's normal for kids to get dirty at the park. That's why I don't like taking him to those places. He always comes back dirty with clothes to wash. But he was really happy today. Thompson, you can't always give in to Ethan's whims. He needs to learn discipline. Playing in the park isn't a whim. It's what children do. Jessica stopped putting away the groceries and looked at her husband. Are you questioning how I take care of Ethan? No, I just think that because I'm the one who stays with him all day while you're at work. I know what he needs. Michael felt the conversation was heading in a direction he didn't want, so he decided to back down. You're right. I'm sorry. But inside, he was starting to see things differently. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That night, after Ethan went to sleep, Michael watched his son. The boy slept hugging an old toy car, the only toy Jessica still allowed him to take to bed. He's growing up, said Jessica, appearing in the bedroom doorway. It's true. Sometimes it feels like he was just born yesterday. Michael, we need to talk about Ethan's future. What do you mean? I've been thinking that maybe it's time for him to go to a boarding school. He needs to learn to be more independent. Michael turned to face his wife. Boarding school? Jess, he's 3 years old. There are excellent institutions that take children as young as 3. It would be good for his development. But I want Ethan here with me. He's all I have. That's exactly why you need to think about what's best for him. You work too much. I have no experience with children. Maybe professionals would be a better option. No, Ethan stays here. Jessica sighed. All right, it was just a suggestion. But think about it. When Jessica left the room, Michael kept looking at Ethan sleeping. The idea of sending him to boarding school gave him a sinking feeling in his stomach. It was as if he was losing his son little by little without even realizing it. The next day, Michael decided to run an experiment. He told Jessica he would be working late, but actually came home at lunchtime. When he opened the door, he heard voices coming from the living room. "Ethan, how many times do I have to tell you not to leave toys lying around?" "Sorry, Aunt Jessica, I forgot." "Forgetting is no excuse. You're grounded in your room for the rest of the afternoon. But I didn't do it on purpose. Don't talk back to me. Go to your room now and don't come out until I say so." Michael stood frozen in the entryway, listening to the conversation. Jessica's voice was very different from when he was around. It was harsher, more impatient. He walked into the living room and saw Ethan with tears in his eyes, holding a toy car in his hand. "Hi," said Michael. Jessica turned quickly, with a surprised expression. "Michael, I'm glad you're home. Ethan was throwing a tantrum because I asked him to put his toys away." Ethan looked at his father, then at Jessica, but said nothing. "Ethan, what happened?" asked Michael, kneeling down to his son's level. The boy hesitated. Michael could see he wanted to say something but was afraid. I was just playing and forgot to put the car away." "And why are you crying?" Ethan looked at Jessica again before answering. "Because I was disobedient." The answer sounded rehearsed. Michael sensed something was wrong. "Ethan, do you want to have lunch with me today?" Ethan's face lit up. "Can I?" "Of course." "Jess, you don't mind if I have lunch with Ethan, do you?" "No, of course not." But he was grounded. "I think we can let it slide this time." During lunch, Michael tried to talk to Ethan about how he was feeling, but the boy gave short answers and kept looking at Jessica the whole time. After lunch, Michael said he needed to go back to work, but actually waited in the car on the street. "I wanted to see if I could observe anything from the window." Half an hour later, he saw Ethan at the window of the apartment. The boy was standing there looking outside with a sad expression. He wasn't playing, he wasn't doing anything. He was just looking. At that moment, Michael understood what Margaret had tried to tell him. Ethan was unhappy, and he had been negligent for not noticing it sooner. That afternoon, instead of going back to the office, Michael went to look for Margaret in the park. "Mr. Michael, did something happen?" "Yes, I think you were right about Jessica." Michael told Margaret what he had observed at home during lunch. "What do I do now? How can I help Ethan without making a bigger mess?" "First, you need to win Ethan's trust again. He's afraid of causing trouble." "How?" "Spend more time with him. Alone. Let him speak without worrying about judgment." "What about Jessica?" "One step at a time. First take care of Ethan, then we'll think about Mrs. Jessica." "Mrs. Margaret, can I ask you something? Why are you helping me? You don't know me." Margaret looked away for a moment. "Because when I lost my daughter, I was alone. No one helped me. No one saw what was happening until it was too late. I don't want that to happen to Ethan." "What happened to your daughter?" "Emily had an illness that the doctors couldn't diagnose in time, but before she got sick, she was unhappy. I was going through a difficult divorce, working too much, and didn't pay attention to the signs. When I finally realized she needed help, it was too late." Michael felt a tightness in his chest. "I'm sorry." "Thank you. It was 5 years ago. Since then, I try to pay attention to the children around me. Ethan reminds me a lot of her. The same age, the same sweet way, the same need for love." "Do you think there's still time to fix things with Ethan?" "There's always time, Mr. Michael. Ethan loves you very much. He just needs to know that you're truly seeing him." That night, Michael decided to put the plan into practice. He came home at the usual time and announced to Jessica that he was going to give Ethan a bath. "Give him a bath, but I always give him his bath." "I know, but I miss doing it. It's been a while since I've had these moments with Ethan." Jessica seemed irritated, but couldn't deny it without seeming strange. "All right, but be careful not to let him play too much in the tub. He should already be sleeping." In the bathroom, Ethan was more relaxed. Away from Jessica, he became more like the child Michael remembered. "Daddy, can I play with the ducky?" "Of course, son." While Ethan played in the tub, Michael decided to ask some questions. "Ethan, have you been feeling happy lately?" The boy stopped playing and looked at his father. "Happy how?" "Happy to be at home, to play, to talk." Ethan thought for a moment. "I'm happy when you're here, Daddy." "And when I'm not?" Ethan hesitated again. Sometimes I get sad. Why do you get sad? Because I miss you. And I miss Sarah too. The nanny Sarah. Yeah. She played with me and let me talk a lot. Now I have to be quiet because otherwise Aunt Jessica gets mad. Michael felt his heart race. Aunt Jessica gets mad when you talk. She says polite boys don't talk much, and that I can't bother you because you already work a lot, and when you come home you want to rest. Ethan, I never said you bother me. I love talking with you. Really? Really? You can tell me anything, anytime. Ethan smiled, but then became serious again. Daddy, can I ask you a question? Of course. Is Aunt Jessica going to live with us forever? The question took Michael by surprise. Why are you asking that? Because sometimes I miss how things were before. How were they before? When it was just you and me. We used to play more and you weren't always tired. Michael Thompson hugged Ethan in the bathtub. My son, it doesn't matter who lives in our house. You will always be the most important person to me. Understand? I understand. And if anything makes you sad or scared, you can tell me, okay? Ethan nodded, but Michael saw hesitation in his eyes. After Ethan went to sleep, Michael kept thinking about the conversation. It was clear his son was unhappy, but it was also clear he was afraid to speak openly about Jessica. Michael decided he needed more evidence before making any drastic decisions. The next day, he discreetly installed security cameras in several rooms of the house, telling Jessica it was because of the robberies happening in the building. Cameras inside the house? Don't you think that's excessive? It's just a precaution. They say thieves have been breaking into apartments during the day. Jessica didn't seem very convinced, but she didn't argue. Michael set up the cameras to record everything and send the footage to his phone. Now he could see exactly what happened when he wasn't home. In the first few days, he didn't see anything too serious. Jessica was impatient with Ethan, but nothing that seemed like abuse. Michael began to question if he wasn't overreacting, but on the fourth day, something happened that changed everything. Michael was in a meeting when he received a notification on his phone. One of the cameras had detected movement in the living room. He opened the app and saw Ethan playing alone on the floor with his toy cars. Suddenly, Jessica entered the room talking on the phone. No, Mum, I can't take this situation anymore. That boy is such a pain. He's clinging to me all the time, and on top of that, he's such a crybaby. Michael felt his blood run cold. Ethan had stopped playing and was looking at Jessica. I know I married him knowing he had a son, but I thought it would be easier. Kids that age are so much work. Ethan got up and tried to leave the room, but Jessica saw him. Ethan, come back here. I haven't finished cleaning this room. The boy returned and sat on the floor, but now he was clearly uncomfortable. Jessica continued talking on the phone. If it were up to me, I'd send him to boarding school right away. But Michael is so attached. I need to convince him little by little. Michael was recording everything on his phone. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. What's this story about Grandma Margaret? Jessica continued. She's some homeless woman the boy met on the street. Now Michael thinks she's a saint just because she took care of him one day. Homeless people always have ulterior motives. Ethan stood up again and tried to leave the room. Stay there, Ethan, Jessica shouted, covering the phone. You only leave when I say so. But I need to use the bathroom, said Ethan in a low voice. Hold it a little longer. Michael was in disbelief. Jessica was forbidding Ethan from using the bathroom just to exert control over him. The phone conversation continued. No, Mom, Michael doesn't suspect a thing. He works so much he hardly notices what happens at home. As long as I keep the house tidy and the boy quiet, he's satisfied. Ethan began to squirm uncomfortably in his chair. Aunt Jessica, I really need to use the bathroom. I told you to wait. But I can't hold it anymore. Jessica hung up the phone and turned to Ethan with an irritated look. Ethan, you're going to learn to obey me when I tell you something. Otherwise, things are going to get very difficult for you. Jessica's tone of voice was completely different from when Michael was present. It was threatening. I am obeying, said Ethan with tears in his eyes. No, you keep questioning everything I say. That's going to have to change. Ethan began to cry. "I just want to go to the bathroom. Stop crying. Big boys don't cry over every little thing." Ethan tried to hold back his tears, but he was clearly desperate. "Please, you know what? Go to the bathroom, but when you come back, you're grounded in your room for the rest of the day, and I don't want to hear a peep." Ethan ran off to the bathroom. Jessica picked up the phone and called again. "Hi, Mom, sorry. I had to handle a situation here. As I was saying, life would be so much easier if it were just me and Michael." Michael was shaking with anger. He closed the app and left the meeting immediately. He drove home at a dangerous speed, trying to process what he had just seen. When he got home, Ethan was in his room and Jessica was in the kitchen making dinner. "Hi, honey," she said cheerfully. "You're early today. Where's Ethan?" "In his room. He was being a bit whiny today, so I grounded him to think things over." Michael went straight to his son's room. Ethan was lying on the bed, still crying softly. "Ethan?" The boy turned and saw his father. "Daddy? You're back?" "I'm back, son. Come here." Ethan jumped out of bed and ran into his father's arms. "Daddy, I went to the bathroom, but Aunt Jessica still got mad." Michael hugged his son tightly. "You didn't do anything wrong, Ethan. Sometimes grown-ups get angry for reasons that have nothing to do with kids. I don't like it when she gets mad at me." "I know, son. I know." Michael looked into Ethan's eyes and made a decision. "Ethan, we're going for a drive, just you and me. But Aunt Jessica said I was grounded. The grounding is over. Let's go out." Michael went back to the living room where Jessica was setting the table for dinner. "Pat, I'm going out with Ethan for a bit." "Out? But he's grounded." "Not anymore?" Jessica looked surprised. "Michael, you can't keep undermining my authority with Ethan. I grounded him for a reason." "What reason?" "He was being disobedient." "How?" Jessica hesitated. "He was throwing a tantrum to go to the bathroom when I was busy." Michael stared at her. "Throwing a tantrum to go to the bathroom? Pat, kids need to go to the bathroom when they feel the urge." "I know that, but he has to learn to wait when it's necessary." "Necessary? Why?" Jessica was visibly irritated. "Michael, you're questioning every decision I make with Ethan. That's not healthy for our relationship." "Our relationship? What about what's healthy for Ethan?" "Ethan is fine. You're the one overreacting." Michael took a deep breath. He didn't want to confront Jessica in front of Ethan, but he couldn't pretend he didn't know what was happening anymore. "We're going out. We'll talk when we get back." Michael and Ethan went to the same park where Margaret used to sit. As expected, she was there, sitting on the bench with her notebook. "Grandma Margaret!" shouted Ethan, running to hug her. "Ethan, what a wonderful surprise!" Michael approached. "Mrs. Wilson, do you have time to talk?" "Of course. Did something happen?" Michael told her about the recording he had made. Margaret listened quietly, shaking her head sadly. "Mr. Thompson, unfortunately, this is more common than people think. Stepmothers who marry wealthy men and don't know how to handle his children. What do I do? If I confront Jessica directly, she might deny everything and make things even worse for Ethan. You need more evidence, and you need help from professionals." "What kind of professionals?" "A child psychologist, for example. Someone who can evaluate Ethan and document what's happening." Ethan, who was playing in the nearby sand, came over to them. "Daddy, can I stay a little longer?" "Of course, son." Ethan went back to playing, and Margaret continued. "Mr. Thompson, may I suggest something?" "Of course." "What if Ethan came to spend a few days with me?" Michael was shocked. "What do you mean?" "Not here on the street, of course, but I know a family that sometimes takes me in. Good people, who have space and could take care of Ethan for a few days. That way you'd have time to sort things out with your wife without Ethan in the middle. But don't you think it's too risky? Riskier than letting him keep suffering at home?" Michael looked at Ethan, who was playing happily in the sand. It was the second time that day he'd seen his son truly happy. I need to think about it." "Of course, but don't take too long, Mr. Michael. Children are fragile. They can handle a lot, but there comes a point where the damage becomes permanent." Margaret's words echoed in Michael's head all the way back home. When they arrived, Jessica was in the living room watching television. "Ethan, go brush your teeth," she said, without taking her eyes off the TV. "Can I finish drawing first?" "No, go brush your teeth now." Michael saw Ethan lower his head and obey. It was always like this. Jessica gave orders, and Ethan obeyed without question, even when her requests didn't make much sense. After Ethan went to sleep, Michael decided it was time to have a serious talk with Jessica. "Jess, we need to talk about Ethan." "What about Ethan?" "I feel like he's not happy." Jessica turned off the television and turned to face him. "Michael, Ethan is going through an adjustment phase. It's normal. We've been married for 6 months. When is this phase going to end? Every child has their own pace. Do you really like Ethan?" The question took Jessica by surprise. "What kind of question is that? Of course I like him. But do you enjoy taking care of him, being with him?" Jessica hesitated for a moment. "Michael, I never had children. It's not easy to learn how to handle a child overnight, but you seemed so sure you wanted to be Ethan's stepmother when we met. And I do, but that doesn't mean it's easy." "What exactly isn't easy?" "Everything. Ethan is very clingy, very needy. He can't be alone for 5 minutes without bothering me with some question or asking for something." "Jess, he's 3 years old. That's how 3-year-olds behave." "I know that's how they behave, but that doesn't mean it's easy to put up with." Jessica's brutal honesty shocked Michael. "So, you can't stand being with Ethan?" "I can handle it, but it would be easier if he were less present." "Less present?" "Jess, he's a child." "I know he's a child, but there are more independent children and more clingy children. Ethan is the clingy type." Michael felt anger growing inside him. "Ethan isn't clingy. He just needs attention and affection like any child. And he gets attention and affection. I take good care of him." "Taking good care is more than giving food and changing clothes. It's playing, talking, showing affection. I show affection." "How? When was the last time you played with Ethan spontaneously?" Jessica fell silent. "When was the last time you hugged him without him asking?" Silence again. "When was the last time you praised something he did?" "Michael, it's not fair to judge me like this. I'm learning to be a mother." "Are you learning to be a mother, or are you just putting up with being a stepmother?" The question hung in the air. Jessica got up and went to the bedroom without answering. Michael stayed in the living room, thinking about everything he had discovered that day. For the first time since marrying Jessica, he admitted to himself that he might have made a mistake. Not a small mistake. A mistake that was hurting the most important person in his life, Ethan. The next day, Michael called Margaret. "Mrs. Margaret, it's Michael. Can you meet me at the park? I need to talk about the proposal you made yesterday." "Of course, Mr. Thompson, I'll be there in 10 minutes. When they met, Michael was visibly distressed. "I spoke with Jessica last night. It wasn't a good conversation." "What happened?" "She admitted she can't handle being with Ethan, said he's too clingy." Margaret shook her head. "And what have you decided?" "I want to accept your proposal. Ethan needs to get out of this situation, at least temporarily." "Are you sure?" "I am. But I need to do it in a way that doesn't scare Ethan and that Jessica won't suspect. May I suggest something?" "Please. You could say you're taking Ethan to spend a few days at a relative's house. Instead, he'll stay with me and the family I know." "But what if Jessica wants to call to check on him?" "We'll figure it out. The important thing is to get Ethan out of the house while you sort things out." "Margaret, may I ask you something? Why are you willing to take this risk for Ethan?" Margaret looked into the distance, as she always did when the topic touched on her daughter. "Because Ethan reminds me that I can still make a difference in a child's life. After I lost Emily, I thought my life had no purpose anymore. Taking care of Ethan, even from afar, gave me a reason to keep living." "Don't you think you're risking too much? If someone finds out—" "Mr. Thompson, I have nothing left to lose. My reputation, my home, my job, all of that is gone. The only thing I have left is the chance to help a child in need." Michael was moved by Margaret's generosity. "How do we do this?" "First, I'll introduce you to the family that's sheltering me, Mrs. Betty and Mr. George. They're retired, have a simple but cozy home, and raised 4 children. Mrs. Betty loves kids." What if Ethan feels uncomfortable staying with people he doesn't know? That's why I'll be there too. Ethan knows and trusts me. Little by little, he'll get used to Mrs. Betty and Mr. George. How long would Ethan need to stay there? As long as it takes for you to sort things out with your wife. A few days, a few weeks, and it depends. Michael took a deep breath. All right, let's do it. Are you sure, Mr. Thompson? I am. Ethan needs protection, and I need time to figure out how to resolve this situation without hurting him even more. They agreed that Michael would take Ethan to meet Mrs. Betty the next day. If Ethan felt comfortable, they would put the plan into action. That night, Michael watched Ethan during dinner. The boy ate in silence without asking questions or talking about his day, as he used to before Jessica came into their lives. Ethan, how about tomorrow we go visit a friend of Grandma Margaret's? Ethan's eyes lit up. Is Grandma Margaret coming too? Yes, she is. And Aunt Jessica? No, it'll just be me, you, and Grandma Margaret. Ethan smiled, and Michael realized how rare it had become to see his son smile lately. I want to go, Dad. Jessica, who was washing the dishes, turned around. Where are you going? To visit an acquaintance of Margaret's, Mrs. Betty. Margaret? The homeless woman? Yes. Michael, you're taking our son to a stranger's house you met through a homeless woman. Mrs. Betty is a good person, Margaret assured me. And you trust the word of a street person. I trust the word of someone who has shown she cares more about Ethan than many people who have homes and money. Jessica stopped washing the dishes. What's that supposed to mean? It means that sometimes appearances can be deceiving. Michael, I think you're getting too involved with this woman. It's not healthy. What's not healthy is Ethan being unhappy in his own home. Ethan is not unhappy. Yes, he is, Jess, and you know it. The argument was getting tense, and Ethan started to feel uncomfortable. Daddy, can I go to my room? Yes, son. When Ethan left, Jessica stared at Michael. Are you blaming me for Ethan's sadness? I'm saying we need to rethink how we're taking care of him. And you think the solution is to associate with homeless people? I think the solution is to listen to people who genuinely care about Ethan, regardless of their social situation. Jessica threw the sponge in the sink. You know what, Michael? Do whatever you want. Take Ethan wherever you want. But don't complain later if something goes wrong. Nothing will go wrong. You're very sure of yourself for someone who's known these people for such a short time. I'm sure because these people have shown more genuine concern for Ethan in 1 week than some people have in 6 months. The phrase hit Jessica hard. She left the kitchen without answering. The next day, Michael, Ethan, and Margaret went to Mrs. Betty's house. It was a simple house in a neighborhood on the outskirts, but it was clean and well kept. Mrs. Betty greeted them at the door. She was a lady of about 60, with a warm smile and a motherly way about her. Hello, you must be Michael and Ethan. Margaret has told me so much about you. Ethan hid behind his father, but he didn't seem scared, just shy. Hi, Ethan, said Mrs. Betty, crouching down to his level. How about you come meet my little birds? Little birds? Yes, I have 3 robins that made a nest in the backyard. Want to see? Ethan looked at Michael, who nodded. Slowly, he came out from behind his father and gave his hand to Mrs. Betty. While Mrs. Betty showed the birds to Ethan, Michael talked with Mr. George about the situation. Margaret explained everything to me, said Mr. George. Don't worry. Betty loves children, and that boy will be safe here. Are you sure it won't be too much work? Work? Son, it will be a joy. Since our grandchildren grew up, Betty is always saying she misses having children around the house. Michael watched Ethan in the backyard. The boy was fascinated by the birds and was asking Mrs. Betty excited questions. He seems to be feeling good here, Margaret commented. It's true, I haven't seen Ethan so interested in something for a long time. After 2 hours at Mrs. Betty's house, they left. In the car, Ethan was visibly more cheerful. Daddy, Mrs. Betty is nice, and Mr. George too. You liked them? I did. And the birds too. That's good, son. Daddy, can I go back there another day? Michael and Margaret exchanged looks. Yes, Ethan. Actually, Daddy was thinking, how would you like to stay at Mrs. Betty's house for a few days? Stay overnight there? Yes, Like an adventure. You, Grandma Margaret, Mrs. Betty, and Mr. George. Ethan thought for a moment. What about you, Daddy? Daddy will stay home taking care of some important things, but he'll visit you every day. And Aunt Jessica? Michael hesitated. Aunt Jessica will stay home too. Okay, said Ethan to Michael's surprise. When can I go? Tomorrow if you want. I want to. Ethan's enthusiasm about leaving home was further confirmation that the situation had reached an unsustainable point. That night, Michael told Jessica that Ethan was going to spend a few days at the house of some distant relatives. What distant relatives? From my ex-wife's family. They wanted to get to know Ethan better. The lie didn't sit well with Michael, but it was necessary. And why can't they come here? Because they live in another town, and I thought it would be good for Ethan to get out of the house environment a bit. House environment? What's wrong with the environment in our house? Nothing, Jess. It's just that Ethan has been very quiet. I thought a new environment might cheer him up. And you didn't think you should consult me before making this decision? I should have. I'm sorry, but Ethan was so excited about the idea. Jessica didn't seem convinced, but she didn't argue anymore. The next day, Michael took Ethan to Mrs. Betty's house. The boy was carrying a backpack with his favorite clothes and some toys. Daddy, are you going to miss me? I'm going to miss you a lot, but it will only be for a few days. And will you visit me? Every day. Ethan hugged his father tightly. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, my son, more than anything in the world. When Michael was leaving, Mrs. Betty called him aside. Don't worry, Ethan will be fine here. And if you need more time to sort out your things, that's not a problem. Thank you, Mrs. Betty. You don't even know me, and you're doing this for Ethan. Margaret told me the whole story. That boy needs protection, and we have protection to give. How can I repay this? By taking good care of him when everything is settled. That's all we want. Michael returned home with mixed feelings. On one hand, he was relieved to know that Ethan was safe. On the other, he felt guilty for having lied to Jessica and for putting his son in such a complicated situation. But when he got home and saw how Jessica didn't show even a bit of sadness about Ethan's absence, he knew he had made the right decision. How was the trip? She asked without taking her eyes off the magazine she was reading. It was fine. Ethan was excited about the new house. That's good. How long will he be away? About 5 days. Perfect. That way we can have some time just for us. Jessica's reaction confirmed all of Michael's suspicions. A stepmother who truly loved Ethan would be sad about his absence, would ask questions about how he was doing, would show concern. Jessica showed relief. That night, Michael and Jessica dined alone for the first time in months. Throughout the entire dinner, Jessica didn't mention Ethan even once. Instead, she talked about places they would like to travel to, restaurants they wanted to try, things they could do now that they had more freedom. You know, Michael, I forgot how nice it is to have moments just for us, she said. Really? Yes. Sometimes it's hard to have intimacy when there's always a child around. Pat, Ethan isn't always around. He has a bedtime. He goes to school. I know, but even when he's not physically here, we're always thinking about him, planning things around his routine. It's different when you don't have that responsibility. The word responsibility bothered Michael. Was that how Jessica saw Ethan? As a responsibility? Do you feel like Ethan is a burden? Not a burden, but a big responsibility, yes. Being a stepmother isn't easy, Michael. Being a father isn't easy either, but it's rewarding. For you, it's rewarding because Ethan is your son. For me, it's more complicated. What do you mean, more complicated? Well, I don't have the natural bond that you have with him. To me, he is my husband's son. I love him because I love you, but it's not the same thing. Jessica's brutal honesty was starting to scare Michael. And do you think that can change with time? I hope so, but I can't guarantee it. Pat, when we got married, you said you wanted to be a mother to Ethan. And I do. But wanting and being able are two different things. And if you can't, if you never manage to truly love Ethan, Jessica was silent for a long moment. I don't know, Michael. Honestly, I don't know. That conversation was the last straw for Michael. He realized he had married a woman who saw his son as an obstacle, not as a blessing. The next day, Michael went to visit Ethan at Mrs. Betty's house. He found the boy playing in the backyard with a ball that Mr. George had given him. "Daddy!" shouted Ethan, running to hug him. "Hi, champ! How are you?" "I'm good, Mrs. Betty made a chocolate cake yesterday, and today Mr. George taught me how to play ball." Michael observed Ethan for a few minutes. The boy was beaming, talking non-stop, asking questions, running back and forth. It was the Ethan he remembered from before Jessica came into their lives. "Ethan is doing very well here," said Margaret, approaching. "Last night he slept without crying, which Mrs. Betty said hadn't happened in a long time when he came to visit." "He used to cry when he came to visit." "According to Mrs. Betty, yes. The first few times she brought him here, he would cry before bed and ask if you were okay at home." Michael felt his heart tighten. Was he afraid something might happen to me? He was. Children sometimes develop separation anxiety when they don't feel safe in their home environment. And now? Now he slept peacefully. I think he knows he's in a place where no one will yell at him or punish him for no reason. Michael spent the whole afternoon at Mrs. Betty's house, playing with Ethan and talking with Margaret about what to do next. "Mr. Michael, have you ever thought about separating from Mrs. Jessica?" The question took him by surprise. "Separate? Margaret, we got married 6 months ago. And in those 6 months, Ethan has become more and more unhappy. Sometimes it's better to admit a mistake than to persist in it. But what if Jessica changes? What if she learns to love Ethan?" "Mr. Michael, with all due respect, Mrs. Jessica has had 6 months to show genuine affection for Ethan. What have you seen in that time?" Michael thought honestly. "Almost nothing. And do you think that will magically change? Maybe if I talk to her, if we do couples therapy." "Mr. Michael, the problem isn't your relationship. The problem is that she doesn't want to be Ethan's mother, and that's not something therapy can fix. So what do I do? Get a divorce and admit I made a terrible mistake?" "You admit you made a mistake, but that you caught it in time to fix it before it hurt Ethan permanently." Michael looked at his son, who was playing happily in Mrs. Betty's backyard. "It's so hard to admit I failed in my marriage." "Mr. Michael, failure would be persisting in a situation that's hurting your son. Courage is recognizing the mistake and changing it." "And if I separate from Jessica, and Ethan asks why?" "Ethan already knows why, even if he can't explain it in words. Children sense when they're not welcome. Do you think he'll be traumatized by another change?" "I think he'll be relieved, but obviously he'll need support to process everything that's happened." "What kind of support?" "Child therapy, quality time with you, and maybe some time living here with Mrs. Betty while you get your life reorganized." "Do you think Mrs. Betty would agree?" "I'm sure. She's already smitten with Ethan." That night, Michael returned home determined to have a final conversation with Jessica. "Pat, we need to talk about our marriage." "Our marriage? Why?" "Because it's not working." Jessica stopped watching TV and stared at him. "What do you mean it's not working?" "Ethan isn't happy with us, you aren't happy with Ethan, and I'm not happy seeing my son unhappy." "Michael, you're exaggerating. Ethan just needs more time to adjust." "Pat, let's be honest. Do you like being a stepmother?" I'm learning." "That's not the question I asked. Do you like it?" Jessica hesitated for a long moment. "It's not that I don't like it. It's just harder than I imagined." "And do you think it will get easier?" "Maybe, with time." "Pat, Ethan is 3 years old. He's not going to get easier. He's going to get more active, more inquisitive, more demanding. That's how children grow." "I know that. And are you prepared for that? Do you want that?" Jessica was silent for a long time. "Honestly, Michael, I don't know. I'm not sure I was born to be a mother. Thank you for your honesty." "What does that mean?" "It means maybe we got married for the wrong reasons." "What wrong reasons?" "You married me thinking being a stepmother would be easier than it is. I married you thinking you would love Ethan as much as I do." "So what? We can work on that." "Pat, You don't work on loving a child. You either love them or you don't. And it's clear you don't love Ethan. That's not true. Yes, it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not everyone is born to be a parent. But I was born to be Ethan's father, and I can't let anything harm my son. Jessica got up from the couch. Are you asking for a divorce? I'm saying I think it would be better for all of us if we separated. Because of a 3-year-old? Because of my 3-year-old son? And because of you too, Pat. You deserve to be happy, and you're clearly not happy being a stepmother. Jessica began to cry. Michael, we can try again. I can try harder. Pat, it's not about trying, it's about love, and you can't force love. But I love you. I know. And I love you too. But loving a man isn't enough when that man comes as a package deal with a child. So that's it? You're going to leave me because of Ethan? I'm not leaving you. I'm choosing my son like any father should do. Jessica left the room crying. Michael was left alone, feeling sad but relieved. For the first time in months, he felt he was doing the right thing. The next day, Michael went to talk to a lawyer about the separation process. He wanted everything to be done as amicably as possible. Do you have joint assets? Asked the lawyer. Not much. We were married with a separation of property agreement. And custody of the child? Ethan is only mine. Jessica has no rights over him. Then the process should be relatively simple. Michael also took the opportunity to look for a child psychologist who could help Ethan process all the changes that were happening. Dr. Jennifer, Ethan has been through some difficult situations lately. He needs help understanding what happened. What kind of situations? Michael told the whole story. The stepmother who showed no affection, the unfair punishments, the anxiety Ethan was developing. Mr. Thompson, you did the right thing by removing Ethan from that situation. Children are very resilient, but they are also very sensitive to rejection. How long will it take for Ethan to recover? It depends on many things, but the fact that he has people who truly care about him will make the process much easier. People like Margaret. Exactly. Ethan has formed a strong bond with this lady, and that is very positive. She represents security for him. Doctor, can I ask you something? Can I ask you? Would it be bad for Ethan if Margaret became a more constant presence in his life? On the contrary, it would be very good. Ethan needs secure attachment figures. If Margaret is one of those figures, the more present she is, the better. Even though she is a homeless person. Mr. Thompson, what matters to a child is not the financial situation of the adults who care for them. What matters is love, consistency, emotional security. And from what you've told me, Margaret offers all of that to Ethan. That conversation gave Michael an idea. Perhaps there was a way to help Margaret and Ethan at the same time. That afternoon, Michael went to look for Margaret at Mrs. Betty's house. Margaret, can I speak with you in private? Of course, Mr. Thompson. They sat on the porch while Ethan played in the yard with Mrs. Betty. Margaret, I have a proposal for you. What kind of proposal? I want to offer you a job. Margaret looked at him surprised. A job? I want you to be Ethan's nanny, officially. Mr. Thompson, that's very generous, but let me finish. It wouldn't be just a job. I also want to offer you a place to live. I have a small apartment that I can renovate. You'd have your own home and would take care of Ethan when I'm working. Margaret stayed silent for a long moment. Why would you do this? Because Ethan loves you. Because you've shown more genuine care for him than people who've known him much longer. And because I think you and Ethan need each other. Mr. Thompson, I'm grateful for the offer, but I can't accept. Why? Because it wouldn't be fair to me to accept charity just because you feel guilty about Ethan's situation. It's not charity, Margaret, it's a job. You'd take care of Ethan, I'd pay you a salary, you'd have your responsibilities and rights. And what will people think? A rich businessman hiring a former homeless woman to care for his son. Margaret, I don't care what people will think. I care about what's best for Ethan. And what's best for Ethan is to be with people who truly love him. Margaret looked at Ethan in the backyard. Does he really need me? He does, and I think you need him too. Why? Because caring for Ethan has given you purpose again. It's given you a reason to live. And Ethan needs that. He needs someone for whom he's the center of the world. Margaret began to cry. Mr. Thompson, it's been 5 years since anyone offered me a chance to start over. So will you accept? But what if I can't do it? What if I'm not a good nanny? Margaret, you're already a good nanny. You protected Ethan when he needed it most. You watched over him, cared for him, worried about him. That's more than many people do. And your ex-wife? Won't she cause trouble? Jessica isn't my ex-wife yet, but she will be soon. And no, she won't cause trouble. In fact, I think she'll be relieved. How long would I have to think about the proposal? As long as you need, but Ethan will stay here with Mrs. Betty until I sort things out at home. When he returns, I'd like you to be there. When would that be? About 2 weeks at most. Margaret dried her tears. Can I talk to Mrs. Betty and Mr. George about this? Of course. In fact, I think they also have something to say about Ethan. That evening, Michael had dinner at Mrs. Betty's house. During dinner, Ethan was more excited than Michael had seen him in months. Daddy, today I helped Mr. George water the plants. That's great, son. And tomorrow, Mrs. Betty will teach me how to make cake. Are you enjoying staying here? I am. Everyone here is nice to me. Ethan's words broke Michael's heart. Everyone here is nice to me. That meant not everyone at home was nice to him. After dinner, while Ethan watched cartoons with Mr. George, Michael, Margaret, and Mrs. Betty talked about the future. Margaret told me about your proposal, said Mrs. Betty. I think it's a wonderful idea. You think so? Ethan needs stability, and Margaret needs purpose. You two complete each other. What about Ethan staying here until I sort things out? He can stay as long as needed, but may I make a suggestion? Of course. What if Ethan kept coming here a few times a week, even after everything is settled, like a grandparent's house? The idea moved Michael deeply. You would like that? We'd love it. Ethan is already part of our family. And Margaret? Margaret too. She can live with you and work caring for Ethan, but whenever she wants, she can come here too. This house will always be open to her. Michael looked at Margaret, who was crying again. What do you think, Margaret? I think for the first time in 5 years, I'm feeling hopeful again. 2 weeks later, Michael had officially separated from Jessica. The process was more amicable than he expected. Jessica was visibly relieved not to have to deal with Ethan anymore. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked on the day she came to pick up her things. I'm sure. It's better for all of us. And Ethan, how is he handling the separation? Ethan is fine. Actually, he's better than he's been in months. Because he doesn't like me. Jess, it's not that he doesn't like you, it's that you two never connected. And that's okay, it doesn't always happen. Do you think I'm a bad person? No. I think you're a person who wasn't born to be a mother, and there's nothing wrong with that. Thank you for not hating me. I don't hate you, Jess. I just think we met at the wrong time in our lives. When Jessica left, Michael felt a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for another relationship that hadn't worked out. Relief that Ethan could finally come home. Margaret moved into the apartment Michael had renovated. It was small but cozy, with a living room, a bedroom, a kitchen, and a bathroom. It was in the same building as Michael's, 2 floors below. It's perfect, she said when she saw the finished apartment. Are you sure you don't want something bigger? Mr. Michael, for someone who lived on the streets for 5 years, this is a palace. On the day Ethan came home, Michael was nervous. How would his son react to the changes? Daddy, where's Aunt Jessica? Was Ethan's first question. Aunt Jessica went to live somewhere else, son. Why? Because sometimes adults find out it's better to be friends than to live together. Ethan thought for a moment. Is she coming back? No, son. But you can visit her whenever you want. I don't want to visit. Ethan's honesty confirmed what Michael already knew. The boy had never felt comfortable with Jessica. And now, who's going to take care of me when you're at work? Grandma Margaret. Ethan's face lit up. Is Grandma Margaret going to live here? She's going to live here in the building in apartment 1004. And she's going to stay with me every day. Every day. Ethan ran to hug Margaret. Grandma, are you going to be my official babysitter now? Yes, I am, my angel, if you want me to. I do, very much. That night, Michael put Ethan to sleep in his own room for the first time in months. The boy was beaming. Daddy, today was the best day of my life. Why? Because now it's just you, me, and Grandma Margaret, like a real family. Ethan's words moved Michael. A real family. That was exactly what they were now. 6 months later, Michael and Ethan's life had completely transformed. Ethan was attending therapy with Dr. Jennifer and had made incredible progress. He was more talkative, more confident, happier. Margaret had proven to be not only an excellent babysitter, but also a natural educator. She helped Ethan with his homework, played with him, told him stories, and most importantly, loved him unconditionally. "Mr. Michael," she said one day, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "Ethan asked me if he could call me Grandma forever." "And what did you say?" "I said he can call me whatever he wants as long as it's with affection." "And you? How do you feel about being called Grandma?" Margaret smiled. "I feel as if Emily had given me a grandson to care for." Michael had changed too. He learned to balance work and family better. He left the office earlier, spent weekends playing with Ethan, and most importantly, learned to value the right people. 1 year after the separation, Michael received an unexpected call. "Michael, it's Jessica." "Hi, Jess. How are you?" "Good. Really good, actually. I'm calling to thank you." "Thank me." "For making the decision to separate. You were right. I wasn't born to be a mother, and forcing the situation would only hurt all of us. I'm glad you understand that." "How is Ethan?" "Ethan is doing great. Very happy. And Margaret?" "Margaret is part of our family now. She saved Ethan. Actually, I think she saved both of us." "That's good. I always felt guilty for not being able to love Ethan." "Jess, don't feel guilty. Love isn't something you can force." "Thank you for understanding." "And Michael?" "Yes?" "You were a good husband. You just weren't the right husband for me, just like I wasn't the right wife for you." "That's true, but now we're all where we should be." When Michael hung up the phone, Ethan appeared in the living room. "Who was that, Dad?" "It was Aunt Jessica. She sent you a kiss." "Okay, Dad. Grandma Margaret is making fudge. Can I go help?" "Of course, son." Ethan ran off to Margaret's apartment. Michael looked out the window and saw, in the park down below, children playing with their parents. He thought about how blind he had been before, how he had almost missed the chance to give Ethan the happy childhood he deserved, how he had almost sacrificed his son's well-being for the sake of a marriage that was doomed from the start. But mostly, he thought about how the most unlikely people sometimes are the ones who teach us the most about true love. Margaret didn't have money, didn't have her own home, didn't have social status, but she had something much more valuable, a heart capable of loving a child as if he were her own. 6 months later, Michael made a decision that surprised everyone. He asked Margaret to adopt him. "What do you mean, adoption?" she asked, confused. "Margaret, you've taken care of Ethan better than many people who have a legal obligation to care for him. I want you to have rights over him too. I want you to be officially his grandmother." "But is that possible?" "I talked to my lawyer. It's a complicated process, but it's possible, if you want." Margaret started to cry. "Mr. Michael, Margaret, Ethan loves you like a grandmother. You love him like a grandson. Why not make it official?" "And what does Ethan think?" "Why don't you ask him?" Margaret called Ethan, who was playing in the backyard. "Ethan, come here for a minute." "What is it, Grandma?" "Your dad had an idea. He wants me to become your real grandmother, on paper. How do you feel about that?" Ethan looked at Michael, then at Margaret. "Aren't you already my real grandma?" "I am in my heart, but not on paper." "And if you become one on paper too, what changes?" "Nothing changes, my angel. It just becomes official that you are my grandson." Ethan smiled. "Then I want you to become my real grandma on paper too." The adoption process took 8 months. During that time, Margaret attended social work courses, underwent psychological evaluations, and proved once again that she was the right person to care for Ethan. On the day the adoption was finalized, Michael, Ethan, and Margaret celebrated at Mrs. Betty's house. "Now you are officially a family," said Mrs. Betty, raising a glass of soda for a toast. "We were always a family," said Ethan. "It's just that now everyone knows." That night, as they were heading home, Ethan asked a question that surprised Michael. "Dad, do you think Mom in heaven is happy?" "Why?" "Because now I have a grandma to take care of me, and you have Margaret to help you take care of me." Michael hugged his son. "I'm sure she is very happy, Ethan. And you, Dad, are you happy?" "I'm happier than I've ever been in my whole life." "Me too. We made the right choice, right?" "Yes, we did, son. We made the right choice." 2 years later, Michael was at the park playing with Ethan when a woman approached them. "Excuse me, are you Michael Thompson?" "I am. Why?" "My name is Amanda. I'm a journalist. I'm doing a story about unconventional families that worked out. Someone told me your story." Michael felt uncomfortable. "I'm not sure I'd like to give an interview. It wouldn't be an intrusive exposure of your life. It would be a story of hope, about how true love can overcome prejudice." Ethan, who was listening to the conversation, tugged his father's shirt. "Daddy, what is she talking about?" "She wants to tell our story to other people." "Our story with Grandma Margaret?" "Yes." Ethan thought for a moment. "That could be cool. That way other kids can know that family isn't just Mom and Dad." Ethan's wisdom impressed Michael. "All right, we can talk about it." The story was published 3 months later. It told the story of a businessman who almost lost his son by marrying the wrong person, but was saved by a homeless woman who became the child's grandmother in spirit. "True family isn't defined by blood or money," Michael said in the article. "It's defined by love, by care, by the willingness to put a child's well-being above anything else." The story's impact was unexpected. Michael received hundreds of messages from people who had gone through similar situations. Single parents who had married the wrong people, stepmothers and stepfathers who couldn't connect with their spouse's children, people in vulnerable situations who had found purpose by caring for children. "It seems our story touched a lot of people," Margaret commented. "It's because our story is about hope," Michael replied, "about second chances and finding family in unexpected places." 3 years after Margaret's adoption, Michael made another unthinkable decision. He sold his construction company and opened a shelter for children in vulnerable situations. "Are you sure about this?" asked the accountant. "Your company is worth a lot of money." "I'm sure. I want to use that money for something that truly matters." The center opened on a rainy Tuesday in March. On the first day, it received 5 children. Margaret was hired as the educational coordinator and Mrs. Betty as a volunteer caregiver. "What shall we call the center?" asked Margaret. Ethan, who was now 7 years old, raised his hand. "Can I make a suggestion?" "Of course, son." "How about Emily's Center, in honor of Grandma Margaret's daughter?" Margaret began to cry. Michael hugged them both. "Perfect, Ethan. Emily's Center is perfect." The center grew quickly. In 6 months, it was serving 20 children. In 1 year, 50. Margaret had proven to be a natural administrator, and Michael discovered he had a talent for social work. "Don't you miss your old life?" asked Mrs. Betty one day. "My old life, how? Working 16 hours a day to earn money I didn't even have time to spend. Being in an unhappy marriage with someone who didn't love my son." "Yeah, when you put it that way." "Mrs. Betty, for the first time in my life, I'm doing something that truly matters. I'm helping children in need. I'm close to Ethan, and I'm working with people I love." "And you, Margaret?" asked Mrs. Betty. "Do you miss anything?" Mrs. Betty, 5 years ago, I didn't even have a place to sleep. Today, I have a home, a job I love, a grandson who is the light of my life, and a purpose that makes me wake up happy every morning." "And Ethan? How does he feel about all these changes?" Ethan, who was drawing at the table, looked up. "I feel proud." "Proud?" "Yes. Proud of my daddy, who helps other kids. Proud of my grandma, who teaches everyone. And proud of myself because I helped you find each other." Ethan's words moved all the adults present. "How did you help us find each other?" asked Michael. "Because if I hadn't gotten lost that day at the mall, you would never have met." And if Aunt Jessica hadn't been mean to me, you would never have realized that Grandma Margaret was nice. Ethan's simple logic left everyone speechless. It was true. All the difficulties they had gone through had led them exactly where they needed to be. 5 years after the opening of the Emily Center, Ethan was 12 years old and helped at the center on weekends. Margaret had become a reference in children's social work in the city, and Michael had found his true calling. "Daddy," said Ethan one Saturday afternoon, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course, son." "Do you ever regret separating from Aunt Jessica?" "Never. Why?" "Because I sometimes think, if you hadn't separated from her, maybe you wouldn't have really gotten to know Grandma Margaret, and maybe we wouldn't have the center, and maybe all these children wouldn't have help." "That's true. Sometimes bad things happen to lead us to good things. So Aunt Jessica was important too, right? Even though she was mean to me." "How so?" "She was important because she taught us what we didn't want, and that helped us value what we really wanted." Ethan's wisdom impressed Michael once again. "You're right, son. Aunt Jessica taught us a lot about what a real family is." "Exactly. A real family is whoever cares, protects, and loves. It doesn't matter if it's a father, mother, grandma, or anything else." That evening, Michael was reflecting on the conversation with Ethan when Margaret appeared at his door. "Mr. Michael, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Margaret. And stop calling me Mr. We're family." "That's what I want to talk about. Michael, have you ever thought about getting married again?" The question surprised Michael. "Why are you asking that?" "Because I think you deserve to be happy. Completely happy." "I am happy, Margaret." "I know, but you deserve to have a companion too. Someone who truly loves you and Ethan. And if I don't find that person, you will, when the time is right, with the right person." "How are you so sure?" "Because you're a good man, Michael. And good men deserve love." "What about you? Don't you think about finding someone?" Margaret smiled. "I've already found my family. You and Ethan are all I need. But you're still young, Margaret. You could restart your love life. Maybe one day. But for now, I'm happy being Ethan's grandma and working at the center. It's more happiness than I thought I had a right to feel in life." 2 years later, Michael met Rachel. She was a child psychologist and had started working as a volunteer at the Emily Center. "The work you do here is impressive," she said on the first day. "It's a labor of love," replied Michael. "Every child who comes through here teaches us something." "And Ethan, is he your son?" "Yes. He's the reason all of this exists." Rachel and Ethan got along well from their first meeting. She didn't try to force closeness or compete with Margaret for the boy's affection. She was simply herself, caring, respectful, genuinely interested in Ethan's well-being. "Daddy," said Ethan after a few months, "Rachel is nice. Is that so?" "Yes, she talks to me like I'm a grown-up, but she doesn't forget I'm still a child." "And what do you think of her?" "I think she likes you, and I think you like her too." "And how would you feel if I liked her?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Happy, because she's different from Aunt Jessica." "How is she different?" "Aunt Jessica pretended to like me when you were around. Rachel really likes me, even when you're not watching." "How do you know?" "Because yesterday, when you went to the bathroom, she asked me if I was enjoying the ice cream. And when I said I was, she smiled. It wasn't a fake smile. It was the smile of someone who's happy when a child is happy." Ethan's observation touched Michael deeply. At 14, his son had learned to distinguish genuine affection from pretended affection. "And Grandma Margaret, what does she think of Rachel?" "Grandma Margaret likes her. She said Rachel has kind eyes." "And do you trust Grandma Margaret's judgment?" "I do. Grandma Margaret is never wrong about people." Michael started dating Rachel 6 months after that conversation. This time he took it slow. He gradually introduced her into Ethan's life, respected Margaret's feelings, and most importantly, observed how Rachel behaved when she thought no one was paying attention. "She's special," said Margaret after a few months. "Why?" Because she understands that you and Ethan are a package deal, and not only does she accept that, she values it. She isn't trying to win you over in spite of Ethan, she's trying to win you both over. And Ethan? Ethan adores her, and most importantly, he's not afraid of her. A year later, Michael asked Rachel to marry him, but before proposing to her, he talked with Ethan and Margaret. "What if it goes wrong this time too?" asked Ethan. "Son, there are no guarantees in life. But Rachel is very different from Jessica. She truly loves children. She's been working with children for 15 years, and she wants to be my stepmother. She wants to be your friend, and if you develop a deeper affection over time, great. If not, she'll keep being your friend." "And Grandma Margaret? Will she still be my grandma?" "Forever, Ethan." "Rachel understands that Margaret is part of our family." "Then it's okay. You can marry her." Ethan's permission moved Michael. "Thank you, son. Your support is very important to me." "Dad, can I say something?" "Of course. I've learned that family isn't just who lives in the same house, it's who truly cares. Rachel cares about you, about me, and even about Grandma Margaret. That's why she can be part of our family." The wedding was a small ceremony at the Emily Center. Ethan was the ring bearer, Margaret was the matron of honor, and Mrs. Betty made the cake. "I never thought I'd get married in a children's shelter," said Rachel, laughing. "This is where our story began," replied Michael. "This is where it makes sense for it to continue." On the honeymoon, which was a family trip to the beach, Ethan made an observation that perfectly summed up all of their journey. "Dad, did you realize we had to go through a lot of bad things to get to the good things?" "I did, son. Mom had to leave for you to meet Aunt Jessica. Aunt Jessica had to be mean to me for you to meet Grandma Margaret. And we had to go through all of that for you to meet Rachel." "That's true. So does that mean sometimes the bad things are just a path to the good things?" "I think so, Ethan. Then we don't need to be sad about the bad things that happened anymore. We can be happy for the good things they brought." Ethan's life philosophy at 14 impressed all the adults present. 5 years later, Ethan was 19 and studying psychology, inspired by Rachel and Margaret. The Emily Center had become a national reference in child social work. "Ethan," said Michael on a Sunday afternoon, "are you proud of our family?" "Very proud. Why?" "Because our family is different. It's not conventional." "Dad, a conventional family is one that works. Ours works. Everyone loves each other. Everyone respects each other. Everyone takes care of everyone." "That's true. Besides, our family shows other people that family can be anything. It could be father and son and adoptive grandmother. It could be father and son and caring stepmother. It could be all of that together." "And you don't mind that people sometimes don't understand?" "No, because the ones who need to understand our family are us. And we understand perfectly." That evening, Michael was in the garden with Rachel, Margaret, and Ethan. They were celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Emily Center. "Do you know what's the most amazing thing about this whole story?" said Rachel. "What?" everyone asked. "It's that every person here saved the other in some way. Michael saved Ethan from a bad situation at home. Ethan saved Margaret from a life without purpose. Margaret saved Michael from an unhappy marriage, and you three saved me from loneliness." "And Ethan?" asked Margaret. "Who saved Ethan?" "Everyone," replied Ethan. "You all saved me. But most of all, you taught me that being saved sometimes means saving other people too." "How so?" asked Michael. "When I was little, I thought I needed to be saved. But now I understand that helping you save yourselves also saved me. We saved each other together." Ethan's observation left everyone emotional. "Ethan," said Margaret, "do you remember the day we met?" "Of course. You found me crying in the park." "Do you remember what you thought when you saw me?" "I thought you looked like a real grandma. Even without knowing me, you wanted to help. And now, what do you think when you see me?" Ethan smiled. "I think you are my real grandma, and that it was fate that made us meet." "I think the same thing," said Margaret. "I think Emily sent you to me to take care of." "And I think my mum sent Grandma Margaret to protect me," replied Ethan. Michael hugged the whole family. "I love you, all of you." "We love you too, Dad," said Ethan. "And you know why? Because you had the courage to do the unthinkable." The unthinkable. Yes. You chose true love over appearances. You chose your son's happiness over other people's opinions. You chose to start over instead of pretending everything was okay. "Ethan," said Rachel, "you've grown so much." "It's true. But you taught me how to grow. You taught me that family is about choosing to love, not being forced to love." That night, when everyone had already gone to sleep, Michael stayed alone on the balcony, thinking about everything that had happened since that day. He saw Jessica yelling at Margaret on the street. He could have ignored the situation. He could have blindly believed Jessica's version. He could have kept pretending everything was fine to avoid facing the truth. But instead he did the unthinkable. He listened to a homeless woman that nobody took seriously. He put his son's well-being above the convenience of marriage. He let go of the life he had to build the life Ethan deserved. And he discovered that sometimes the unthinkable is exactly what we need to do to find true happiness. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this touching story. Did you relate to any character? Which moment moved you the most? And what do you think about Michael's courage in choosing his son above all else? Leave your comment sharing your honest opinion about this family that formed in such a special way. If you liked the story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one. Thank you so much for following along until the end.